trying to free your mind, Neo, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it. You have to let it all go, Neo. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind.
This is the Mind is Mine podcast. What it do, ladies and gentlemen, is Houston, your boy. I have not been in attendance for a while, but I'm glad to be back for episode 10. I have a very, very special guest with us, Dr. Julie Gary. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. So we encountered through our podcast with Story Stitchers, got to know you a little bit, had a great conversation. Definitely recommend you guys listening to that podcast sometime soon. But now I have you on my podcast, which is an honor to have you here. Is there anything that you would like to say just to kick it off, just to introduce yourself?
I would just say, based on kind of this week's events in St. Louis, where the shooting video was released from the local high school, I would just say it's okay to not be okay. So if you're struggling today for some reason, whether it's related to watching that video or hearing about it again, or just anything else going on in your life, it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to speak up about needing help. 100%.
100%. I haven't seen that video at all.
Good.
Where would that video be?
It's you can Google it, and it's out there available. It got released by the police department yesterday.
Okay.
So the investigation wrapped up last week. Someone had put in a sunshine request, which is a public information request, according to the sunshine law the state of Missouri has. So when a sunshine request is put into government, we are required to release information. And so the video, the uniform cam, and a couple other videos were released as a part of that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Well, to start with our podcast, one little question that we ask at Story Stitchers that I want to kind of bring on to here is, how is your mental health today? And we kind of just go around the round table and just discussing that. But I feel it's very important not only to ask that amongst other people, but amongst you as well. So how is your mental health today?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't get asked that a lot. I ask that a lot. So it's always nice to have people ask me how I'm doing. So today I'm kind of middle of the road. I'm celebrating moving my daughter back into college this week. So she's starting her sophomore year as a soccer player at SLU. So super excited about that. Roll Billikens. And then my middle kid, Elijah, so my daughter's Jordan, and my middle kid, Elijah, just started his first full-time job with benefits today. So that's super exciting. But it's been like a pretty hectic work week. We have just some contract renewals going on, and Narcan purchasing going on, and kind of start of the new fiscal year finance stuff going on. So that's been a little hectic and kind of kept me up at night a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. With the summer ending, there's a lot more moving pieces going on. A lot of people going back to college. As soon as we come back from our vacation next week, my brother has to go straight to college. So it's definitely a little hectic time. And if we don't keep our bearings, then it kind of is hard to focus on everything that's going on lately. So
absolutely.
It's good that you're hanging in there and that you're remaining focused with all the hecticness going on in the end of the summer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I talk to people about coping skills all the time. So, a lot of mine are just getting outside, exercising, prayer, no matter what, religion or what your belief is, mm-hmm. Whether it's just kind of like silently saying that you wish for something to happen, or praying to whoever you believe in, that always works for me as well. So I always start my day with that, and that kind of starts my day off on the right step. And then I kind of end my day with being outside, or taking a walk or something like that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. One of the things that I found out while taking the walk or being outside in the outdoors, that's kind of where my best ideas come from. because I practice a lot more stillness when I'm outdoors, just listening to the birds, listening to the wind, and just allowing nature to take hold of me and let me sail along those winds rather than what my mind is trying to tell me. So it's a lot more calming, and then I become more of a vessel for ideas to work through me. But that is a good segue into a question I wanted to ask to kick it off is how does faith impact our mental health, and how can we incorporate it into our approach of tackling it and combating it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something I've learned a lot more as I've gotten older, like how important faith is to my own mental health and my own stability in my mental health, and climbing out of lows and celebrating highs. And so what I encourage people to do is just make it a routine. And when I say routine, it doesn't mean it has to be a boring routine. It's just, hey, I'm starting my day with this, whether it's, a 5-minute prayer or something like that. So I use an app. And since I've done that, I can honestly say, like, I do have more peace in my life because I am relying more. We tend to rely on ourselves, and we're like, I can do this, or I didn't do this, or I failed at this. And what we don't kind of just let ourselves settle into is that we have a story that is orchestrated by someone larger than ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so when we do that, and when we talk to him or her or it or whatever we want to call it, some of the pressure comes off of us. And we pray for the things that we need or that we want answers to, or we pray to fill a void, or we pray in a way that celebrates something that God or whoever gave us on this particular day. So since I've incorporated that into my first thing in the morning routine, and then I also have this reminder on my phone that goes off at noon every day that says, take a moment to pray. So whether it's me just saying, thank you, God, for getting me through these things I had this morning, or thank you for letting me get this funding or helping this person today. Those are all things that I kind of give up to that being, and it releases that pressure off of me. So since I've done that, I've been able to handle a lot more things in my life, like as a mom, as a widow, as someone who has a job that has a lot of responsibility, as a leader. Being able to kind of weave faith into it has definitely made all of those things so much easier for me. So I highly recommend, if you've never been in some kind of organized religion, that's okay. I actually think it's better because then you develop your own relationship with faith, and you figure out what works best for you in terms of, how you can use it to reflect on your life, how you can use it to celebrate your life, how you can use it to ask for things that you need.
100%. I'm glad that you brought that up, because how I started my journey was kind of by myself, and then people that I've met all around me, because you attract what you are. And I've never been a part of any type of organized religion. However, the journey that I'm on now, and the phase that I'm at within my own journey, is surrounding myself with the right type of community, because I've always been, alone, always alone in my type of journey rather than just my close friends. So now I'm really building that community. I'm seeing how important it is to build that community. It doesn't have to be organized religion at all. It can just people off the street, people that you just meet throughout your life, throughout your day-to-day life. And I think that's very, very important to open up that opportunity to connect with the community. And it doesn't necessarily have to be within the church or within any type of temple. It can just be, like I said, through your day-to-day life, and you never know who you meet, and you never know the conversations that you will have throughout those days. Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. Church can be in your house. Church can be on the street. Church can be in your workplace. It can be so many things. It can be out in nature. I kind of wish people would, in general, realize that a lot more, because we think that if we go to church on Sunday or whatever day of the week, that we're kind of like checking a box or something like that. But church is about being in community, wherever that community is. And so wherever your community is, whatever works for you, that's what I recommend you doing.
100%. 100%. Also, I wanted to touch on the importance of prayer or meditation to start the morning and also to end the day, because I've noticed through trial and error, through learning how to pray and how to do that properly and how to be comfortable with that, especially through meditation, because that can be a little hard for people that are constantly in their head and constantly talking in their head. There's a lot of noise into the world today, and sometimes that noise infiltrates our own energetical space. And that struggle really taught me how strong I was and how strong God is through me. And I always felt every time that I wake up in the morning and go deep into meditation or go deep into prayer, my day has been put on a pedestal a lot more than it would if I didn't at all. And just things seem a lot more clear. There's a lot more clarity to my day. There's a lot more confidence, but I think it's the gratitude alone that really sets my day off on the right path. Because also I understand that I'm not in control of everything. I'm just grateful for what happens for the day, and I have to do what I must. I have to do what I can. And anything in between, I just let the universe do what it needs to do.
Yeah. So you mentioned an important word, energy. So that for me is huge, and something that I shifted, probably happened when I was about 30, where I worried less about like what the world said about me and the people around me, and just kind of believed in kind of those scriptures that told me who I was in my faith, and started my day with trying to clear that noise that the world has for us, and learned kind of statements of affirmation that I could use for myself throughout the day. So kind of starting out with that prayer, understanding that if anything negative happened during the day, it's kind of like Simone Biles, before she was doing one of her routines this week, you saw her mouth to herself, "You've got this," right? So it's learning those things that we can say to ourselves during the day that, God, like clearing our mind, letting God speak to us and saying to ourselves, like, "You've got this, you can do this, this is nothing." And understanding that when you tell yourself those things, you're clearing out any negative belief that you have, any negative energy that you have, and you can kind of step forward through the challenges that you might have on that particular day.
100%. I am a little curious on your own individual path in terms of faith and how that started and where you're at today with that.
Yeah. So I was raised Catholic in a small town in Missouri. And my dad was a farmer, and we used to go to church as a family every Sunday. My family had 4 kids, so all 6 of us would go to church on Sundays. It was kind of a ritual kind of thing. And I didn't really probably start talking to God like in kind of emotional ways until I was in college. So my parents got divorced when I was like about in 5th grade. So definitely then our religious practices changed. My dad stayed in the Catholic religion, and my mom took us to a Methodist church in the new town that we moved to, but we didn't go like all the time. And then I went to junior high and high school, and I definitely like had my struggles as typical teenagers do. And also my parents were divorced, so I didn't see my dad a lot, and that was definitely like a huge void for a young girl. And I'm seeing that kind of in my own kids now, as my personal story has played out. But then I graduated from high school, and I went to Notre Dame. That was my undergrad. And that school is all about like the motto is God, Country, Notre Dame. So I'm a veteran, that. Mm-hmm. And that is where like my personal relationship with God kind of took off. It was where I like went to the grotto, which is this beautiful outdoor space with candles lit, and just talked to God, in a nature space. And that's where God started to kind of show me some of the things that he wanted me to do with my life. And coming out of there, then I went to my military service. So it was kind of where God shaped me into. I'd always been someone who served, but that's where he really showed me like how meaningful service was going to be in my life. And that's where my pathway of service and faith started. But I did, we all have those kind of lows in our life. So I still had things that I had to battle through that, God had as a part of my story, that have led me to and away from him over time. And I would say the closest I've ever been in my relationship with God is in the last 4 years since I lost my spouse. And I have to do so many things on my own that I wasn't before. And a lot of people would say like, you need a partner, right? And I've gotten to this point in my life where I'm not saying that anymore. Like I'm saying like God will bring me someone if he wants me to have a partner. And God is going to take me through everything he can to make me as strong as I am as a single person before if it's meant to be, before I have a partner in my life again. So I've learned a lot of things and I feel like he's taking me through this so that I learn to lean on him more than I ever have before. And it's working.
100%.
So I don't worry about things anymore. And people are always like, how are you so strong? And I'm like, it's not me that's strong. It's my faith. So
that's one thing I'm practicing is the ability to be a vessel and allowing God to work through me, however that may be. Like I said earlier, the importance of prayer and the importance of meditation to me, and to everyone, I guess, is to let go of control, because I understand that I cannot control everything and I don't control whatever comes my way. But the only thing I do control is how I handle it and how I react to it. Better word is respond to it. And I think that's super important, because we live in a world, especially my generation, we want to control everything. So that's why I do what I do, because I want to constantly remind people that, yeah, we can't control everything, but if you allow yourself to, it's the saying, like, let Jesus take the wheel, but right. It doesn't necessarily have to be Jesus. It can be whatever right. empowers you and whatever you feel guided to do and whatever you feel guided to bring not only greatness into your life, but other people's lives. And that's the role that I'm stepping into now with this podcast and with everything that I do with my creativity, is to constantly inspire people. But I know the ideas that work through me are just temporary. I'm just a foot soldier in a way. And I'm glad that you and I are alike in that way in terms of understanding and having the awareness of that. But one thing I do want to touch on too, that you brought up, is divorce. And back to the mental health conversation, is how does divorce, because I have a family history of divorce within many different areas of life, but my parents have went through a divorce, and I can touch on that a little later. But what is the impact of divorce, not only in your life, but people that you've talked to, and how does that impact people's mental health going forward? Yeah, so I would call it it's a grief process, right? So it has a huge impact on both partners, because your identity, unfortunately in our world, your identity is a lot about like who you're with or who your partner is. And I've like learned that more than ever these last few years. So that's how the world sees it. Like, is the person by themselves or are they with someone? And if they're with someone, like, who is that person, right? And then when there are children involved, it becomes even bigger. So our identities as kids rely on, our identities as kids and our perception of relationships relies a lot on what we see our parents or our birth parents, whether they're married or not, what we see them do with their life, right? That's the example we look to. So for me, in fifth grade, my parents got divorced. And it was like it was a sudden thing. We knew things weren't good, but the final separation was a sudden thing, meaning wake up in the morning, you're told by one of your parents that you're leaving. Okay. So it's this kind of ripping apart of everything you've ever known.
to now only see one of your parents. And we know in our society, like how hard it is for a single parent to raise kids. There are just so many demands, so many jobs you have to work to juggle it all. And so that not only does it take away the parent unit, but it takes away that single parent, their full effort and energy that could be used to parenting, because they have to handle all the responsibilities that it takes to finance being a parent. So what does it do to kids then? Well, it gives kids a skewed view of what a successful household is, right? So a lot of us say like, oh, a single parent household is not a good thing, when in all reality, in some cases, it's a better thing, because the relationship wasn't healthy to begin with. But if the child viewed it for many years and it was unhealthy, that's what they see as healthy. And so then when they go to make partner choices for themselves, they don't always make the right choices. We aren't always good at listening to God when he tells us like, this is not the right choice for you. We all have those moments we fail and we fall. And so that, for me, when it comes to kids, it's like they lose a part of their identity when their parents get divorced, because one of the parents is not around all the time, and they lose their view of what a healthy relationship is. And so that makes it hard for them to make the best choices for themselves when it comes to their future relationships. So once we, I think, realize that, as we're growing up and going through a situation like this, and we pray about it and we understand that that's a trauma that we have, we can kind of process that better and ask ourselves as we're meeting people and meet potential partners. Well, first of all, I'd say if you are looking for a potential partner, like pray about it. All of my counselors have said, and the way I would approach it is know the qualities that you want in a person and list those out on a prayer list. The second part of it is list your deal breakers. And keep reminding yourself, keep it in your phone or wherever you look all the time. And so if someone hits one of those deal breakers, you got to stick to it. You got to say, you know what, this is a deal breaker for me. This is obviously not the person for me. And not making choices based on the fact that having someone there is important. And sometimes that's hard, right? Because there are moments in a month, for example, that we don't want to be alone. For me, it's about 5% of the time. The rest of the time I'm good. But for young kids, it's much different. Like they want to be connected to someone. They want to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a partner. But what I would say is make sure that partner like really adds to you. If they're taking anything away from you, or if you feel unsettled most of the time, then it's not a good thing for you. And so you just have to pray about it. Like, what are the qualities I'm looking for in a person? And does this person really add to who I am? And if they don't, and if you're a faith-filled person, and they're not faith-filled, like that's a huge red flag from the beginning. Like you really, if you are into your faith, you have to have someone who's into their faith.
That's 100% true. While you were saying that, it made me go back down the line of many different relationships, and I don't think about it often because I kind of got it through my head that I have ignored red flags just to be with somebody. Yeah, just to be with somebody. And it's interesting how the form of attachment can get with a person, and we see that person not for the person that they are, but just as a relief, I guess you would say. And any type of red flags that come up, we tend to ignore it, especially my generation, that we're very quick to jump into situations that aren't really meant for us or that we're not really thinking about at all, which it is part of a learning process sometimes just to jump into things. But as we get older and become more serious about where we want to be in life and who do we want to take on this journey with us, whether it's friends, families, as a wife and kids later on as well, it's very, very important for us to go to the drawing board and see where do's and where don'ts, and what are something where are we looking for and what are we not looking for. So you bringing that up is very, very important. Also, it's a good reminder for me because I am single now, but I'm always open for the relationship. But I don't think I've taken the time to understand, okay, what am I actually looking for in a relationship? But it is the last point that you made, finding somebody of faith. If you are in faith yourself, I've realized that's super, super important, because it's so easy for me to disconnect with somebody that isn't about their faith at all, because that's so crucial to my life now. It completely changed my viewpoint and my mindset of life. And if I can't have somebody similar, I don't want somebody the exact same as me, of course, but those similarities that really bring us together isn't really there at all. And then I kind of just don't see how it can grow from there. But also another question in terms of divorce. Have you worked with couples before that were going through a divorce or thinking about divorce?
Yes. I have kind of on the side, I have this life coaching business, and I do a lot of couples. It kind of started out as like people who were my friends who were like, we are trying to navigate this disagreement. And some of them have ended up, kind of taking the path of divorce. And so it should be this long exploration of like individual counseling and couples counseling before that decision is made. It's, excuse me, it's not something that I advise like jumping into quickly. There has to be like, if it is jumped into quickly, it has to be something that drastic that happened. It's definitely something that I would recommend talking to each other about it, going to counseling together, and then going to counseling separately, so that you make sure you're making the right decision for yourself. A lot of times people stay together because of kids, or because that's what the world would want them to do, or because that's what the Bible says, right?
Right.
But that's not always the best answer for each individual person. So, and there are lots of couples that do it, that get divorced and still have healthy parenting separately and become friends. And so there is kind of a right way to do it. But I would recommend having that outlet of a counselor to navigate that divorce process, so that it is as healthy as possible, and your kids can see it, if you do have kids, for it to be as healthy as possible.
Has there been, I don't want to say a formula, but have you experienced certain ways to really help couples get back together at all? Is there like a certain formula, or was there like a certain conversation point that will actually engage the healing process between the couple?
I think that the best way to know if you think you might want to get a divorce, and you really want to explore that for yourself, I think it's important to take time apart. So whether it's, hey, we're living in the same household, but we are not together, or we're briefly separated, that's when most of the couples that I know who have gotten back together have realized, I don't want to be, and it's not even, I don't want to be by myself. It's, I don't want to do life without that person. But it takes a separation to do that. Not like a legal separation or something like that, but just, hey, we're going to take 6 months. We're going to kind of figure ourselves out, and then we're going to make a final decision. And most of the couples that I know who have gotten back together have at least taken that 6 months to figure it out, and then realize the best thing for them is to stay together. I even know people who have been split up for years and gotten gotten divorced, and then have been apart for years, and then have gotten remarried to each other. I know 2 couples like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So they just, and it wasn't like they went out and like dated a bunch of people. It was just, they took time apart and realized, you know what, we should have stayed married. And then they get remarried.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Oh, actually, I know 3. Yeah. So, and one of them is one of the most beautiful marriages I know. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we all go through our up and downs.
Yeah.
But what you said about separation is super important. And I've never been married. I'm only 25. So the only thing I can relate to is just the relationships I've been through. especially high school relationships and stuff like that. But one thing I will say in terms of how important that separation process is, in taking time for yourself to think about it and be in tune with your own emotions. If you're an empath and heavy on empathy like I am, being around that person for a while can make you feel like, okay, you're starting to push away your own thoughts and your own emotions away, to the point where it's like, okay, I want to be with this person, but it may not be the right choice for me to be with this person.
Yeah, so I can totally relate to that. So I am an empath as well, and I am also in a profession that's a helping profession. So I tend to be the one always who is helping fix things. People tell me their stories, which I love. But then, like you said, when you get in a relationship like that, let's say it's like one of your best friends, or it's your partner or whatever, then we are such helpers, and we feel so much for people going through things that we forget about ourselves, and people don't expect us to speak up about our feelings. So that's why when you opened the podcast and said, how's your mental health today? I don't get asked that a lot. I probably have 5 people in my life who check on me frequently. And it's like totally random, infrequent. It's not like a weekly thing. And so for empaths, that can be a hard thing. So what I would say is that, especially in relationships, it's important that it's a partnership. So you, as an empath, you need to be taken care of too. So when you get into a relationship, it's got to be a 50-50 thing. It's got to be an 80-20 thing. It's got to be, if you're at 80 and I'm at 20 today, then that's our 100, right? Or if we're both at 50 on this particular day, great. We're both contributing the same, but we're not always going to be like that. So it's on days when we're not at 100%, do we have a partner who understands that, yeah, we're empaths, but we shouldn't have to help all the time. And there are going to be days when we need help and that we need people to check on us, and who is checking on us. And if they're not someone who's checking on us, then that's kind of a huge red flag. So that is something empaths we have to navigate carefully, because we can tend to also like helping other people and like fixing and there are some situations that we cannot, only God can fix. Mm-hmm. And so we have to remove ourselves from those situations. And sometimes it's hard to figure out when we should and what situations we should remove ourselves from, but you learn that over time.
Yeah. At a young age, I felt like I could mend almost everything. But the cost of that was mending other people's feelings and trying to be nice to people all the time, which, I mean, I get it. I love being nice to people. I'm not an angry person at all. That's not my forte. But however, it has kind of pushed my own healing journey aside for other people's healing journey, and to the point where it was hard for me to mend any type of situation or be as a strong support like I want to be, because I haven't really taken the time to benefit myself and heal myself, because I'm always pushing myself away, in a way being a people pleaser, because I have this urge to mend things, but I'm putting the most important thing that needs to be mended, which is my emotions and my thoughts and my journey itself, for other people's journeys. And I can get lost in that. And, you know, that has affected relationships going down the line. But now I feel like I'm way better with that. I'm still growing. I'm always open to therapy, which we've talked about before. And I'm very excited for that journey. So what would you say to empaths that are wanting to break that habit?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is, and I talk about this a lot to other people who are in the helping profession. We have a class, like an hour-long class on self-care and burnout that we give to city employees and to other organizations. I've also given it to correctional officers, police officers. So while we are helpers and while we want to fix everything for other people, we also have to check in with ourselves every day about our mental health. Okay. So you ask me how my mental health is today. We have to ask ourselves that. And so I think I may have told you guys this on the Story Stitchers podcast, but I have these 2 reminders on my phone during the day. And I think it's an Apple thing, but there are lots of apps that do this.
Yes.
It'll say reflect, a heart pops up and it'll say reflect on how you're feeling about your day. And so you check off these feelings. It's literally, you just touch them really quick. And then it goes to a follow-up screen that says, what factors are contributing to those feelings? So it'll be like my job, my family, my relationship, my faith, like all of these things listed there. So you can choose like what's. So when we check in like that, it makes us focus on it for a second, and it makes us say like, oh, I'm sad today, or I'm happy today, or I'm stressed. And so we check in with ourselves and we say, okay, well, if I am stressed, if I am sad, what can I do to kind of fix that? And so then we talk to people about like, okay, what are some coping skills? And we have a little kind of card thing that has 100 listed on it. And we have people circle it and put it up in their, at their desk at work, so that if they are having that moment where they're like, oh, I'm stressed, they can look up and say, okay, these are the things I said that work for me. So whether it's getting up and going to take a 5-minute walk, listening to music really quick, something like that, anything to kind of decompress themselves. So you got to check in with yourself. You got to know what coping skills work for you, and you've got to use those on days you aren't feeling at your 100% mental health wise. And then the third piece is, which we talk to employees about the resources we know they have. And I've also given you some resources that we have. But the third piece is you have to know when to ask for help. And you cannot tell yourself, oh, I'm fine, I'm just going to keep driving on, right? There are days when you're not okay to the point where you need to ask for help, or it's happened enough days in a row where it's affecting your ability to do your daily activities or your job. It's affecting your relationships. Those are the moments when you're like, you know what, guys, like I'm the one who's always here helping. I'm at a point today where I need help. And sometimes, and this is kind of where you see the people in your life that understand you, because some people will like walk away quickly and say, some people aren't going to respond. Like, I think I talked about my kids and I have a group text, and if one of us says I'm struggling, like we're all there, kind of the next few days, like supporting them in any way that we can. You're going to have some friends and family members that don't know how to handle you saying that, because you're an empath. You're the one who always helps. And so it's important to understand, who in my life can I go to on days that I'm not okay, who is really going to listen to what I have to say and support me in a way that's going to help me get out of the struggles that I'm currently in. So
as an empath too, that's a very uncomfortable conversation, because you're always the one that wants to help people. But when the tables turn and figure out that, oh, I'm the one that needs help, that's a very, very uncomfortable conversation to bring up, because one, you either don't know how to bring it up at all, or two, you are so used to pushing that away to the point it's like you don't really think twice about it at all. And one thing I've learned is that the more we push it away, the more we're bound to combust over the amount of pressure. And I had my first guest that I ever brought on, his name is Roro, the storyteller. One of the biggest thing that he always tells me is like,
I think I know this person.
Maybe. If you do, then that's crazy. That would be dope if you did. But he always tells me, it's like, pressure can either bust pipes or it can make diamonds. And we can either fold or we can excel through that pressure. And I'm learning how to excel, and I want to continue to do that, not only for myself, but help other people do that. But I'm in that point in life where I have to find help for me rather than just help other people, because
most therapists will tell you they have a therapist.
Yes.
So just so you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's okay. Because we're when we help people all the time, we carry that burden with us. And so you have to, so there's a show, if you haven't watched it, it's old, maybe like 10 years old, but it's called In Treatment. It was an HBO series, and each episode was about one of the clients that this therapist had. But then every like 5 weeks, it would be his therapy session. So the therapist, you went through like all the episodes of him giving therapy, but then he would have a therapy session, and you would learn like all the things in his life that he was struggling with, yet he was giving therapy to all these other people. So therapists need therapy too.
That's interesting. I never heard of that show.
Yeah, you should watch it.
I don't watch much TV.
I might watch it again.
Okay.
I don't either.
Yeah, that is kind of, I feel
Sports
like that's
in the news, pretty much. That's what I watch.
I feel like that's a good benefit to the mental health, is getting away from screens.
Yes.
I'm learning to cut my screen time, which I've been better with, way better with. But I've noticed getting out of my phone, and there's days where I only have like 1 hour of screen time because I'm so involved with the day in front of me.
Yes.
To the point where it's like I feel so rejuvenated and so energized for my day, rather than taking in what the world wants me to think and how the world wants me to think and how it wants me to feel and what it wants me to do. Because at the end of the day, our subconscious mind is going to be a sponge. So that's always going to be present. And if we don't know how to manage that, then we become a walking, talking iPhone as well.
Yeah. And, or we live in a world of comparison, which is the worst thing you can do. You know, I don't know. I got away from comparison early in my life. I don't really know how, but it's just not something I've always, and even more so in the last 10 years, probably 15, probably around when I was 30, I don't care what people think. Like, and my daughter will say, when she was like, I don't know, in high school still, she would say like, one of the best things and worst things about me is that I don't care what other people think. So, she said it's more of a good thing than a bad thing, but there are times when it's a bad thing, because I'll just say, you know, what's on my mind. And, and that tends to rub people the wrong way. But yeah, I mean, you know, when we're on our phones all the time, it's like, oh, so-and-so's doing this, or so-and-so bought a house, or so-and-so bought a new car, or, you know, whatever. And it's just, you know, God has a plan for us. Right. And so, and it's not always, it's definitely not always about material things.
Yes.
So, and that's definitely a transition I've made as well is, I don't love shopping. Like, it's just material things for me are just not. And so that's hard, because I have kids who are still like 23 and 19. I have a 27-year-old too. But so for me, sometimes for them, I'm like, you don't need that, or, you know, and it's hard to say that as a mom, but, you know, sometimes I think my daughter's learned that more than anything she's the one who's the most into her faith out of the three of them. And she's become more kind of methodical about choosing purchases or spending less money and things like that, and realizes like, it's not an important thing.
Yeah. Now I'm in the point where experience is way better than material, because it goes a way longer way.
Right.
And the lessons that you learn through experience rather than purchasing items can take you so much farther.
Right.
And also can mend so many different relationships too as well.
Absolutely.
So I'm very grateful for the experiences that I went through, and also the shift in mindset that not only that I have, but that y'all have had as well, because it has opened the door for so many different aspects of life rather than just materialism. And I'm actually working on a video myself, becoming a creator in the world of consumerism and capitalism, because
I love that.
Yeah, we tend to really get lost into consumerism. And that's one thing. I love Kendrick Lamar, and his last album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, was huge on therapy. Every song got deeper and deeper into vulnerability and to what he's been going through, till you reach the end of the album, which discussed that he has been living through generational trauma unconsciously, and now that he's coming to terms with it and willing to sacrifice himself for his kids to be better than him, and then so on and so forth. So one of the things that he talks about in the first song is United in Grief, is how he bought all these random things just to make him feel good. But later on down the line, a month later, it's like, okay, I want to buy another thing because I'm still grieving. And I've went through that as well. And I've seen so many people, whether if I'm still close to them or not, who have fallen down that line of grief and have expressed it through materialism to the point where there's no money at all. And they have all these items and all this fashion and they look really good on Instagram, but deep down inside, I know that they're struggling. So is there a way how we can combat that, especially here in the world of capitalism where it's just buy all the time?
Yeah, that's a hard question.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of a loaded question.
I mean, I think you're doing the right things. We can challenge the people that we can influence, and show them how we live our life, right? And even my kids recently, well, it's probably been a few months, who were like, "Are you okay? You don't post that much anymore." And I'm like, my life is so peaceful, and being on social media just like sucks you down these holes where you have things that you're like, oh, this person's doing this or this person's doing this, or you see a negative news story about the election or something like that. So I think it's just influencing the people you can influence to show them that you don't have to have like the nicest things in the world or a ton of money. Or, I mean, if people saw like where I live, it's very modest. Like that's just what I've shifted to in the last 5 years. And actually it's also much more peaceful, because I went from a house when I was married before my husband passed that had like a TV in every room. And now we have one TV. And we have tons of shelves with books on them, and the TV's hardly ever on. And we have,
that TV's not even plugged in.
We have music, we have music playing a lot. We have a dog, I mean, they're just different things that are our priorities now, than before. And so I think when you start to show people that, okay, this is how I live and I'm happy. I tell people I am more content and peaceful in my life currently than I've ever been. And I went through a huge loss. So how is it that I've changed my lifestyle's dropped in terms of monetary reasons. I live in a much more modest house. I don't have a partner. I'm a single mom, but I'm telling you that I have much more peace and contentedness and calm than I've ever had. It's because I've stepped away from those other things. And even my daughter's friends will say, the things that your mom I love when your mom posts, because when she does, it's so obvious how much she values the little things. And so that's what I try to do for the people around me, is little things, so that they see how good it makes them feel. And so in hope that they will do the same thing, so that it's like a ripple effect. And I try not to post a ton on social media. I share stuff about my kids and stuff. I used to post a lot more because my mom was on there, but she's not anymore. She's just not as tech savvy. Yeah. And so now it's just I share some, I share your guys' stuff. I share our, the Department of Health stuff, random stuff about my kids, random stuff about being outside, but it's just it's not a need. And so I want people to start to take steps away from that, and see, and then check in about their mental health and see how much better they feel by not being on it.
Yes.
I really think that test, each person kind of testing themselves to see how much it improves their mental health by not being on it is the way to go.
One thing I've realized too with social media and seeing people on social media like influencers and celebrities is that it means so much to our identity and how we like to glue ourselves to this view of this person or what this person is doing to help shape our own identity. And with me getting into Buddhism at first, I've learned so much about attachment, and how that is one of the main causes of suffering, and how whenever we attach ourselves to that one thing, we create a bond in which we feel like we can't live without. And so many kids, I ran into my 5th grade teacher the other day, who's a lovely woman. Shout out to Miss Ozagera. I love her so much. She's one of the best teachers I've ever had. I asked her, I said, are you still teaching? She said, yes. And I said, are you enjoying it? She was like, not as much anymore, because the kids want to be the same person. They want to be this influencer. They want to have all these things. And it's so much different than when you were in high school, which she brought up.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, she brought that up. It was like 11 or 12 years ago. I was like, dang, I feel old.
Oh, for me, it was a long time ago.
But just bringing that up, because I'm not in the schools anymore, obviously, but right. Just seeing that, just hearing that, just kind of just made me feel unsettled, because the next generation coming up that is so into the phone, even greater than I am in my generation, is going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah. So I think what I would say in response to that is God made us each to be a unique, special being, right? Mm-hmm. And what kids are getting away from that now. Like yes. Even a lot of adults are. They want to be like so-and-so, or they want to make this much money, or and for me, like I started out my career serving, and I've come back to do that again. And I've come back to do it for a reason, because I like explored all that other stuff. It doesn't make you feel good.
Yeah.
What makes you feel good is having like peace and calm and serving people every day, and caring less about yourself. And so it makes me sad that kids like everyone wants to be like this NBA player or that movie star. It even makes me sad that like there are reality shows that like show dating in a light that's not super healthy, like Love Island and Love is Blind, and kind of some of those shows where you're like, this is not, a lot of kids are watching it and you're like, this is not healthy in any way. And so you want people to like take those breaks from social media, so that they see like they can reflect on themselves more and understand the good qualities that they have and who they are as a person, versus seeing other people and saying, I want to be like this person. They should want to be like the best version of themselves. That's the competition we have, is being better than we were yesterday.
Yes.
So understanding like, okay, who was I yesterday and who do I want to be? You want to be the best version of yourself. You should not want to be anyone else. God made you to be unique. And then once we understand ourselves and the best version of ourselves, then we can do a better job of like choosing people that we want around us.
Yes.
So, that aren't on social media.
Yes, 100%. One thing that I've went through, and that a lot of people in my circle have went through and realized, is that yes, our similarities is what brings us together in terms of relating to each other, but it's the differences that makes us stand out and make us very unique, to the point where it's like, oh, who is that? I've never seen him or never felt this type of energy before. I want to be a part of that, or I want to understand that in a way. And I want to get to know this person. So I think that we're really disconnecting with the things that really make us special. It's not just the relatability, but the differences in how we walk, and inspiring people through different ways of living, not inspiring people to be the same way, but to be different and be your own person, which we're not having a lot of spokespeople do that anymore.
Yeah. Or even like groups of multiracial people. Right. Mm-hmm. So I've been like that since I was in college. Well, even in grade school, my two best friends were Tommy Jackson and Michael Washington. I used to play kickball with them on the playground. And they were two black kids, and I was white, grew up on a farm. They were from town. And then in college, my friends, I was the only white girl in my friend group. So I've always kind of gravitated towards people of different backgrounds and people of different energies. And I think even now, my friend groups are very multicultural, people who have like, but the reason we're all together is because we have like energy that when we're together, it makes us better, right? So it's kind of trying to figure out like what does that person have energy wise that I can learn from? I think that's the biggest thing. So a lot of times people will feel different energy and say like, oh, I don't like that energy because it's intimidating, right? Instead of saying like that person has great energy, I want to learn about that energy. I want to learn how they got that energy. I want to learn from them, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to be like them, but I want to learn like how that energy has influenced their path. And I want to figure out how I can, use some of the lessons they learned to move forward in my life. So it's not that I want to be that person. It's their energy makes me better. And as a group, we're better with all of our energy together. And what can we all learn from each other to propel all of us forward? And I think that's what's missing. Like everything, election, all of this stuff, election, the discrimination, the racial wars that are going on. It's kind of all related to like competition, right? Yes. Or like this is the end all be all of human beings, or, NBA players or baseball players or whatever. When what we need to be doing is saying like, what can our energy together do to propel everyone forward, to propel our world forward? And that is so missing on a daily basis. Most people are, which is why empaths like us, we tend to ask people like how they're doing, but it's also why a lot of people we meet don't ask us that, because they're not in that same mindset of what can I do for people around me to propel our population forward. Mm-hmm. So
that was very well said. Very well said. I wanted to segue to the albums that we picked, mm-hmm. because talking about inspiration, talking about how artists inspire other people by being themselves and by being different. We picked two artists that are very, very well off in the world in terms of artistry and influence. Stevie Wonder and the Fugees, most specifically Lauryn Hill. So I wanted to ask, what made you pick that album in particular?
Yeah, there's so much with Lauryn Hill. Well, number one, I work in behavioral health, and I don't know if you know a lot about Lauryn Hill. Like, she is notorious for coming out late at concerts. Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was at the concert here in 2006 or 2007, maybe, at the pageant with three of my best friends, and she came out 2 hours late.
Oh, wow.
And it was obvious that, we were irritated, but she eventually came out. And I mean, historically, I remember her music common, from when my oldest son, who's 27, was like 1 or 2. Like, it was the album that was played in our house all the time. And then, her album, just the Lauryn Hill album, I know like every lyric off of that album.
Oh, the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Yeah. And there's so many like just good lessons and lyrics in that album itself. But for me, I picked this because of what I know about why she comes out late. Like, she really struggles with her mental health. But the fact that she keeps showing up and she keeps talking about it, and her lyrics, kind of highlight it. And she also highlights like what it means to be, she talks about things like in school that we all see, like from when I was a kid in school to kids now, what it's like to be a good girl or a good guy. And that's part of her lyrics, but it's also extremely obvious that, and she's open about the fact that she struggles with her mental health, but she keeps showing up and trying to inspire others through her music and her performances. So that's one of the reasons I picked her.
I love how she has the sit down talks as well during her concerts, and like it's just totally real with everybody.
Yeah.
She's letting everybody know this, that I'm a human first before a celebrity or an artist.
Right.
And she lets the world be known like, hey, like I go through these issues too, and I want to destigmatize that. And that's essentially what we're doing at Story Stitchers as well, is destigmatizing Black mental health. And
absolutely.
And making it seem like that's a hard conversation to have, but even though
the song
is.
"Killing Me Softly."
Yes.
I mean, that's, how old is that song? And that song is about mental health.
Yes.
I mean, in its rawest form. So I'm gonna have to go home and listen to this tonight.
For sure. And that's why I love Stevie, because he's very transparent as well. He was one of the first artists, at least in the soul world, to have that much transparency. There's a song on here. I love this whole album, but a song that I fell in love with recently called Black Man, where he just details like, hey, like it was multiple different cultures that made the world what it is and how special it is, and that we have to unite together and reflect upon the many different cultures that came together to build what we have now, and respect that rather than just pointing to one culture or just one person. And that definitely hit home, because a lot of people, especially in my generation, wouldn't have thought that music back in the 70s like that would be so in tune with what's going on in the culture at that time, rather than just talking about love songs and everything. Like they went deeper than that.
They did.
And Stevie was one of the most prominent to do that.
Yeah. No, I love him as well. He has so many songs that just talk about uniting people, and he also has a great sense of humor, so I like that too.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. So, yep, good choice.
Yes. But to segue off what you were talking about with Lauryn Hill, there is a question that I wanted to ask. I feel that's very important for men to really understand, let alone just women. And it's how different is the approach to women's health compared to men's mental health? And what's the best way for men to support women in their mental health?
Well, that's hard. What's the best way to support them? Listen authentically. There is obviously, there are big differences just physiologically in hormones. And so the pattern of men's mental health is very different than women's mental health when it comes to those hormone cycles. So that's part of it. But also part of it is that historically we've accepted women's mental health as being something open that we can talk about, right? Men's mental health, we haven't always. I think we're getting better, but still there's lots of stigma in certain cultures, including the Black race, about men talking about their mental health. Like, our older generations are not always accepting if a guy were to come forward and say, I'm really struggling with my mental health, or I'm suicidal, or, I'm going to hurt myself or someone else. So I think, and then in terms of like the support that men can have for women, I would say listening is one, not judging or it has to be like a graceful, no judgment zone, right? No matter how bad it might look. We tend to call people certain things like adjectives. Crazy is one of them. If someone is extra emotional on a particular day, and that's not okay. We have to be, if we need to separate ourselves from the situation for a little bit to figure out what to do, but we should never have someone like talking to us about their emotions, even if they do appear irrational. The bottom line is the person needs help, and we need to do what we can to get them that help. And I know at least one of my kids has been through this with a partner, and his partner got admitted. And so for him, it was connecting that person to help, but then also removing himself, because he was in a lot of ways enabling some of the emotion and actions and things like that. And so what we had to coach him on was his partner needed help, and by staying by her side all the time, he wasn't getting her the help she needed. He was there to support her and listen to her, but she needed more help than he can provide, and it wasn't his fault. So he had to like remove himself, make sure he talked to her parents, she got connected to the help she needed, and things ended up being better in the long run. So I think listening, not being judgmental, and making sure you connect them to, you could call the Behavioral Health Bureau. You could, if it's a young person, talk to their parents, just make sure they get the help that they need.
The reason why I asked that question is that I've noticed that, and I'm guilty of it as well, sadly, is that the way that men, especially in the Black community, with our music and how we're portrayed now, we often have a degenerate way of looking towards women now. And I think that's a whole societal thing, but the Black community, especially you hear it in rap music, and I love rap music.
Yeah,
I love
hip hop. I do too.
I love hip hop, but there is a degenerate side of it that
Absolutely.
looks at our women as not people but objects.
Absolutely.
And that's the reason why I wanted to bring that question up, because I myself is getting better in talking to women, treating women better, because I've had my own issues in the past, especially with my mother not being around. That has definitely taken a toll on me. And I wanted to bring that up so young men like I, and even younger, have a more clear understanding of how to treat women and how to talk to women and how to understand a woman when she's going through her trials and tribulations as well.
Yeah. So I would say like, just because you and I may not openly show our emotions around trauma that we've had, there are probably moments we do, right, with certain people, but we just don't know. And this is something I tell my team all the time is you don't know anybody you come in contact with on a particular day, whether it's somebody down the street at Quick Trip or somebody outside on the sidewalk or somebody in your workplace. You are seeing a small glimpse of their life. You have no idea the things that they've gone through. More importantly, you don't know, we could have gone through the exact same thing, and the way it affects me is very different than the way it affects you. So even judging someone based on, their sister passed away, or they got a divorce, or how that impacts each one of us is very different. And so the bottom line is how it impacts us is how it impacts us. And it just because it impacts me worse, it just means I need resources. I need help to deal with that. And eventually, while I might come across as I didn't deal with it initially, eventually I might deal with it. I might be open about emotionally about things that I've gone through. So I think timing is important to understand. It's important to understand like different things affect people differently, and that we just have to be non-judgmental and graceful and listen. And if we can help, we help. But don't like dismiss someone because of their reaction to the trauma that they've had in their life.
100%. I thank you for that. Thank you. One thing I wanted to segue to was we always talk about the issue of fathers not being in the home for all communities. But what were the consequences of the mother not being around? Because for me, I had an absent mother rather than a father. And what conversations have you had or experiences that you dealt with in terms of connecting with people that had an absent mother, and how did you combat that?
Yeah, so I have some situations where either the mother's absent by choice, or the mother's absent because she was legally removed, or she's absent because she passed away. And so those, the mother being absent is very different because the mother is the nurturer. Mm-hmm. And so while the mother like takes care of the child, kind of like builds them up, talks them, helps them believe in who they are, shines a light on each kid differently. takes care of the household in general. And so that void can be huge for a kid. It can make kids who have that void in a parent like not believe in themselves, not know where they want to go in life, not believe that self-care for themselves is important. So many things that can be a huge void for those children. So, sometimes there's somebody else who steps in and fills that, like a grandmother or something like that. But in most cases, no one does. A teacher or something like that might also help, but there's nothing that can fill that void completely. And so those kids typically have to go through extra counseling or things like that to learn kind of coping skills or ways that they can read their mental health more frequently, and to understand that it's not their fault that their mom was not present, and that they can actually go through life and like make an impact for themselves and for others who might feel a void like that.
100%. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Definitely brought a lot of reflection on my own life, because with the awareness that I have now, and I'm very grateful for the awareness I have now, is the ability to accept that a lot of things have stemmed from the absent mother. Mostly my relationships, not only externally, but internally, my relationships with my thoughts, my emotions, my own creativity as well, has suffered in a way because I didn't know how to nurture that. I've never seen that before. And God bless my stepmom. She has definitely carried the load a lot. But like you said, it doesn't fill the void completely.
Right.
And also my mom is Black as well, and my stepmom is white. So definitely a huge difference culturally and racially. So combating that, I have definitely went through the trials and tribulations, and getting into therapy is the next step. And I'm very, very excited for that. Like, I'm actually stoked for that. Yeah. But I just wanted to have that conversation too, because I know people that have absent mothers in the household as well, through a variety of different situations, like you said, by choice or death in the family. And I just wanted to bring that up because we always talk about the absent fathers, but I don't hear a lot of conversation about the absent mothers and how that affects their children growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't, because it's less frequent. And so you don't hear that conversation as often. And that's unfortunate, because those kids actually have a bigger void.
Yes.
So
segueing into, I have a lot of questions, but I want to, with you being a single mother, and being a widow to biracial children, what was the toughest challenge you face that follows with that experience?
Yeah, so I think my eyes were open to the mental health system a lot from the beginning. So that was my biggest challenge was, okay, I'm a white mom of mixed kids, and two of them were already 18. So they were trying to like navigate the system, and showing up as mixed kids to navigate the system. They were having a lot of barriers, but then when I showed up, some of those barriers were removed because I was white. But then also, me being a single parent and a single provider, like, for those parts of the medical system that like maybe we're having a hard time navigate, or that cost a lot more, that was hard too, because our income had dropped. So I think it helped me understand how hard it is for the average single mom to navigate the system, but it's how much harder it is for a Black kid to navigate the system, whether it's a young adult in their 20s or a teenager. It's hard for them to get the mental health services that they need. And that was an eye-opener for me. And that, I knew it sort of, but I'd never experienced it. And so that made me want to do everything I can to change that, and to help people understand there are resources available if they need them.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you for doing that. I commend your strength
Thank you.
for going through that experience and, holding up fairly well.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I will say like the first few months, so here's another thing. We talked about like healing and giving yourself space to heal, and how empaths like aren't really, we don't really always give ourselves time to do that. So when this happened, it was during COVID, it was 2020. So I was in a COVID on-call position. So I really didn't take space for myself until 2 years in, when I decided to move jobs. And I didn't realize it. I didn't realize, like, the first few months, obviously I was going through this extreme grieving process, and the first couple months was terrible. Where you just, like, most days you like didn't want to get off the ground, but you still went through your day somehow. Right. Then get 2 years in where I was able to slow down because I stepped away from my COVID position. And then I realized in the quiet how much healing I still needed to do. And so that's when the true like reflection, faith, strengthening faith, like all of that stuff happened. And I became a better like decision maker, mom, boss, kind of all of those things, because I was able to reflect on what I'd gone through in the last 2 years and say like, oh, these are the things that worked really well. These are the things that did not work at all. These are the problems with the system. And these are the things that need to be done to potentially fix it. And these are the things I need to do for myself, which is not something we're good at as empaths. These are the things I need to do for myself to put myself in a better place, to be better for all the people around me. And so it took me 2 years to do that, to like really see what was going on with myself. So I cannot emphasize enough, like stepping back from things if you can, to really let yourself feel what's going on. And that's why that mental health check every day is a good thing.
I remember you brought up, it was either when we met privately the first time or during the podcast, how leading up to it and even after, you were meeting a bunch of widows too.
Yeah.
I would like to hear more about that experience, because I think that's very interesting, because God puts people in our lives for a reason.
Yes. Some weird things were happening in my life, like a year before my husband passed away. I moved to a new position at Concordia Seminary, and my faith has always been kind of a cornerstone of my life, but it had become more so in the years before. So I moved to this contract position at Concordia Seminary, and I was their health and wellness coordinator. So I was literally around people of faith every day. Students, faculty, staff, a lot of those people are still my best friends. I was actually at lunch with 3 of them yesterday. And they're the people I can be like completely authentic with about what's going on in my life. So at the time I was like, wow, well, God, why all of a sudden am I getting asked to come to Concordia Seminary? So I have that change happening. And then I had 2 close friends on the same soccer team whose husbands passed away. So one of them was a sudden loss. I didn't know, I didn't hang out with this wife very, very much at all. Like, we actually didn't really like each other. But for some reason, the night her husband suddenly died, she called me. It was September 11th, 2019. And so my phone rings. It's a little before midnight. I see this name flash across the screen, and I'm like, why would this person be calling me? So I answer it, and I could not understand anything she was saying. I just knew I had to go to their house. I knew her daughter really well. Like, I gave her rides and stuff, and kind of did a little coaching with her on the side. And this phone call comes, and I knew something terrible had happened. I just didn't know. I didn't know what it was. So on the way there, I called a mutual friend of ours, and I said, hey, I'm going to this house. I don't know what's going on. Like, it could be an argument. I just need to make sure someone else knows I'm going there. And so I pull up, and I was like, where is this person? Because I heard a name on the phone call. It was something like so-and-so's gone or something. So I pull up and I said, where is, and then they say, he's dead. Okay. So I immediately like dropped to my knees. We were the only 2 veterans on our team. He was a veteran too. And I was like, why did she call me? Like, I do not know. I did not hang out with her. I was not close with her at all. So I just helped them kind of navigate everything, like collected stuff from our soccer team, like to bring food over, helped her navigate like the VA system to get her benefits, talked with her kind of through the issues that she was having related to the loss, because it was a sudden loss and it was a sudden mysterious loss. And then a few months later, another one of our soccer parents passed away of brain cancer. And I was closer with her because of our faith, but we weren't really like super close. We didn't hang out or anything. So I had these 2 like situations happen in addition to being at the seminary. And the whole time I was like, what is happening? You know, just asking God, like, you know, why are these things happening? And then all of a sudden in May of 2020, May 22nd, 2020, my husband has a sudden heart attack in the morning in our house. And so that's when I knew why, that's when I knew why God had laid it on her to call me, because he knew I was going to be a widow soon too. And so those 2 became like part of my friend group. We don't necessarily hang out as much anymore because our healing journeys have gone in different directions. But we still are connected by that event, and we are connected on social media. Like we do like randomly text each other and stuff like that. But it's interesting how God put me like in a community of faith, so that when it happened, I still have people who check on me today from that community of faith, including the president of that seminary lives 5 minutes from me in Collinsville. So he put someone who's literally my neighbor as my leader during that time. And he was the first person to call me to say, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I'm friends with his wife now. I take my dog over to see his wife. It's just amazing. So when part of my strength in all of this was knowing that God put me in a place where I had just gone through it with 2 other people, and I was surrounded by people of faith who were constantly going to check on me, send me scriptures in the morning. Like for those 2 years, they were already doing that because of COVID, and they knew the weight I was carrying for COVID. But then when this happened, it was more frequent. And, even today I'm connected with a ton of students on social media from that experience. 3 of my closest friends are my coworkers from that time. It's just amazing, like what God did. So, and that's what I would say is, if you're going through something in your life that's negative, God is definitely going to spin it for something positive. You just have to ask him to show you what that is. And so for me, it's that I've been able to impact mental health, and that I can stand as like a beacon for people who may be starting this journey of grief. Or, as a matter of fact, just 2 weeks ago, one of my coworkers from that seminary, her best friend lost her husband suddenly of a heart attack as he was walking into church. And so she immediately reached out to me and said, I know you've gone through this. What should I tell her? And so I kind of provided my initial piece of advice. Also, my daughter, she was in high school when she lost her dad, and she had someone on her team, a teammate who had lost her mom. And so night 1 of losing her father, she gets this like 5-paragraph text from a girl named Faith, who we know really well, who was like, welcome. She literally, sentence 1 was, welcome to night 1. You are changed forever. Like, these are all the things you're going to feel. And it made her feel like someone knew what she was going through. So it is just amazing, the people that God has put in our life since it happened. And it's amazing from a career perspective, what he's done in my life. 'Cause I never would have even come close to imagine that I would be the inaugural behavioral health bureau chief for the city of St. Louis. And it wasn't my while I have a strong professional background in a ton of things, public health, it was my personal background. It was my military experience plus my personal journey that made me the best fit for this position. And it wasn't one I was pursuing. It was one that God called me to do. I wasn't planning on applying for it. I had no desire to apply for it. But God was like, this is what you should do. So,
one thing I've noticed with everything that you told me throughout the entire podcast is that you're constantly put in positions to be a vessel and to serve not only yourself but others. And I think I commend you for that and your strength. And I love it. I love it. There's not much else I can really say. It's breathtaking in a way how strong you are to go through a situation like that, but also be able to help navigate others through that situation as well, and how you continue to do it today. So I didn't really have much words out of that. That was very, very inspirational, the way that you handle any type of suffering at all, and you're able to be reminded that, hey, I'm going through everything for a reason, and that you're surrounded by a community like that. And like I said earlier, I'm in this point now where I'm starting to surround myself with a community that's not only deep in faith, but deep in their creativity and wanting to do something special with their life. And if anything, you just reminded me how important community is in any type of standpoint. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember that you have to ask yourself when you're in like a low point, like, is this a storm that's going to go away tomorrow? Or is this like part of my journey? And you have to pray to God about that, and if it's part of your journey, like he's taking you through it for a reason. Like there's going to be something good that comes out of it. You just have to ask him what that is, and you have to be patient and you have to wait. And waiting is hard.
Yes, it is. Very much so. There is a question that I wanted to ask, and this came from an experience that I had yesterday. So me working at a gym, I work in the front desk, and I also have experience of signing people up and giving tours and whatnot. This gentleman came in who I could kind of tell that he was possibly homeless or going through like very like struggles, and he was pretty much just, I guess you would say trauma dumping, but just saying like his whole life story and what everything is going on with how he lost his brother. He's here with his nephews and his mom now. Like he came from Vegas and now he's here, but he's planning to move to Florida sometime soon. And he was interested to get stronger because his brother neglected his health. So I give him a tour and everything, but as we were going on, the realization kind of dawned on me that he could be homeless and he's going through something. Mm-hmm. So I gave him a complimentary shake, so he has food in his stomach and everything. And first thing that he said to me is like, thank you for making me feel welcomed. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because how do you guys combat homelessness?
Yeah.
And especially in terms of like companies and in different groups that don't really make them feel welcomed at all, because I had a talk with my manager after who told me not to do that anymore. And it kind of really rubbed me the wrong way because one, it reminded me that I'm a person of service and it put me in a position to be of service. And it felt so good to do that. But also it kind of reminded me that not everybody has that viewpoint. And maybe me being in the position I'm in at the gym and being surrounded by that community, which there's a lot of great people that I work with, but just the standard that corporate has set has just been, it rubs me the wrong way. And it kind of just reminded me of why I do why I do. And it inspired me to really get back on track on like a deeper level. And I wanted to ask, like, homelessness is skyrocketing every single day. I feel like,
I mean, I look at it from a faith perspective. Like anyone you come across who needs help, if you can help them, you should help. It's hard when you're in a corporate environment because, different companies have different philosophies, but I don't know how that situation ended up, but with homelessness, there are lots of different partners in the city that have beds available. And so we have our go-tos. So if we come across someone who needs some kind of mental health treatment, plus we know they're homeless, we have a ton of organizations that will pick up the phone, or I can text and say, hey, I've got someone for you. These are the characteristics of this person. But the kicker is the person has to say yes. So here's an example. Yesterday, when I walked into our building, I was coming from a meeting and I had a big fountain drink. It was literally, I'd taken 2 drinks out of it. It's what I do every day when I walk in. I always have a fountain drink. And there's this group of people that kind of hang around across the street from the health department. And we do outreach there like multiple times a week. And the bottom line is, if you ask them if they need a place to stay tonight, they have to say yes. Okay. For us to execute it, they have to say like, I'm ready to do it. Right. And so this particular guy was like, I was like, hey, how you doing? Good morning. And so I think that's the first thing, right? Like you come across someone, whether you're just walking past them, no matter how they look, how different they are than you, like you speak, you make eye contact and speak, and you make them feel like you care about who they are, right? So I saw him sitting there. He didn't have shoes on. It was hot. It's been so hot. He didn't have shoes on. He looked like his clothes looked dirty. And it was obvious that he was sitting there with no food, no water, no nothing. And he was like, and I was like, good morning. How are you doing today? And he's not someone I've interacted with on, we have like our people that we see all the time. Yeah. This person has not, he's always been part of a group. So I've never had the chance to talk to him by himself. And so I was like, good morning. How are you? And he was like, good. Can I have your fountain drink? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I like walk over to him and I just start talking to him. I was like, how are you doing today? Like, what do you need? And he was like, I need food. And I was like, well, how about if I have a couple of my team members come down and talk to you? I was like, what if we could help you find a place to stay tonight? Would you be open to that? And he was like, yeah, I'd be open to that. He was like, but I'm really hungry. And, and I was like, we'll work on that too. And so I started just asking him some kind of standard questions that we ask. And then I said, okay, we'll be right back down. So I go upstairs and I get my 2 team members and I come down and we like get more information. I reach out to somebody who I know would take him, who was actually coming to our building yesterday anyway. And then I go back upstairs and I let my team members kind of handle it. We ended up getting him food. He didn't end up going to the place we were connecting him to, but we at least like by the 6th or 7th time we talked to him, he might, you know what I mean? So every person you come across, you do what you can at that moment. If they don't decide to like say yes to what you're offering them, then while it bothers you that you're like, I wish I could have put that person up in a bed tonight. They really deserve it. We even got him clothes and shoes yesterday and kind of the things that he needed. But he wasn't ready. When we also said like, have you used today? Right? Because a lot of them are like using drugs, and we want to make sure that like, if they do need substance use treatment or mental health treatment, that we're putting them in the right place. And so he had used yesterday. So we were like, okay, like this is where we can send you, like they'll help you get on your feet. You'll have a place to live. You'll get job training, like all of these things. But he ended up he didn't tell us no, he just disappeared. Mm-hmm. But we know we'll see him again and we'll take that opportunity again. So every homeless person we come across, well, every person who appears to be homeless or every person we come across, we interact with in some way to try to get details on what they need, what we can do to help them, and we try to help them. If they say no or they leave, then, that's all we can do. And so that's the approach I would take. Like, the Bible says, like, you don't know when Jesus is in front of you. Like, you don't know how Jesus is going to present to you, or an angel or anything else. And so I think that's the approach you take. Like, if you can help someone in your life that you come across, then you should help them. And what they do with that help, that's on them. At some point they'll be ready. I mean, we've had people we've gone to 6 or 7 times and eventually they say, I'm ready. So that's the approach we take.
Yeah. And I think, there's a deeper point of empathy too, as well, with you, because a lot of people on the streets too are veterans as well.
Yeah.
And with you being a veteran, how do you, I won't say combat that, but what is your viewpoint on that, on the veteran perspective?
Well, it bothers me that a lot of our veterans are homeless. Like it shouldn't be like that in this country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there has to be a better approach. It also just, it goes back to the little things, right? So it goes back to like any little thing I say to someone, or even making eye contact with someone, like you help people know that you see them, right? Because a lot of people feel unseen, unfelt. And so anything you can do to make someone know that, hey, that lady who I don't even know, she spoke to me today, she made eye contact, she asked me what I needed, that can make a huge difference. Like that might be something that person holds on to, and they know where we are, and they know that we come out and we talk to everyone every day. And so when they are ready for help, they know where to go. And so, yeah, it bothers me that there are a lot of veterans out there, and it bothers me that we don't have a system that helps them in a better way.
It doesn't really make much sense to me at all.
It doesn't to me either. But I would also say that we are historically veterans, we are people who like to have control and like to handle things ourselves and are very disciplined. And so it's also hard for us in general to say yes to help. But there shouldn't be a system where veterans are homeless. We should be in a position to help veterans who have served our country.
Now, when you were in the military, did they have certain factions or certain areas where they will help with mental health? Yes.
It's definitely not as good as it is now, but it wasn't like the norm for people to feel comfortable speaking up about their mental health.
What years were you serving?
I was in from 1994 to 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quite a while.
Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like part of the culture to speak up about your mental health then. It's definitely shifted now. So I was working on a project at the VA in St. Louis in around 2010. And then is when they combined, like they did color clinics versus like a primary care clinic and a mental health clinic. It was like the red clinic, the green clinic. And each one of those clinics had both primary care and mental health combined.
What section of the military were you in? Sorry for interrupting.
I was in the Army.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I did air defense artillery in the Army, so I shot down missiles and aircraft.
Okay.
When they started to kind of transform the VA system, they started combining mental health and primary care clinics. So what that meant is that if I come in for my diabetes, someone's going to talk to me about my mental health too. So that was good. They finally, so it made it comfortable in all spaces, in all clinics, to talk about mental health in addition to your physical health.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. To stay on your military portfolio, I guess you would say, what was the greatest lesson from the military that you still carry close to you today? Because I'm from a family of veterans, but I've never had the passion to go into the military. So speaking from the outside in, I would like to know that for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, it's about taking care of each other and that no one's left behind, which is probably why I have such compassion for people in the position that I have today. It's, truly getting to know each person that works with you and for you and that you serve with, and making sure they have the resources they need to accomplish the mission, and if they're struggling with anything, to make sure that they understand they can talk to you and that you will provide the resources they need. So kind of just that general taking care of each other and leaving no one behind.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. What's a good segue? There are a couple more questions if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Awesome. So we mentioned drugs earlier in homeless, and you do have experience in terms of the opioid crisis.
Yes.
What was it like going through that journey, and what have you learned along that journey, and what exactly did you do?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're still in the middle of it today. Historically, what I have done at the city of St. Louis is run all the analysis on where the opioid deaths are happening, what populations they're happening in, mapping it, understanding like the dollars we have that can go towards fighting it, working with law enforcement on the best approaches. So that's working with St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, in addition to working with the Drug Enforcement Agency, which I'll be training some of them in September on like mental health and self-care and burnout too. But it's kind of just understanding like what we're seeing on the street on a daily basis, in addition to what the trends are over time. So we get all the EMS data. I can log into EMS now and see like everything that's happened today and how many of those were overdoses, getting all the medical examiners data to see how many overdose deaths we had last month, and understanding where they happened. So where the person lives, but then also where the actual overdose death happened. And then analyzing that data to figure out kind of the best approach. So we have a few different initiatives going on related to it. We continue to track the data. We have Narcan machines out in the community that provide free Narcan. We train people on Narcan. We train all city employees on crisis response so that they know how to respond to someone who's in crisis, whether it's a mental health crisis or a drug overdose. We administer Narcan ourselves sometimes around our building if there's an emergency. So it's kind of this multi-level approach. So it's outreach, it's Narcan, it's education, it's linkage to care. So if someone walks in, calls in, emails us, connects with us on social media, we are ready to connect them to resources when they're ready to get treatment. And it's also educating from, age 6 to age 86 on what does an overdose look like, what are drugs, and why I should not use them. It's educating the elderly on their medications, and so that they understand, like, if I put on 2 patches of my pain med, I might overdose, or caregivers, people who are taking care of them. So it's kind of this multi-pronged approach to what's going on. And we've only existed for a year, so it's kind of hard to tell yet what our impact is. I will tell you that overdoses were down for the first quarter of this year, which is a good sign.
I was just about to ask if it's on the incline or decline.
Yeah. So what happened was from 2017 to 2021, we kind of trended up.
Here in St. Louis or nationwide?
In St. Louis.
Okay.
So we trended up. So our highest year was 2020 and 2021. 2022 stayed at a plateau, and then last year we saw a slight drop. And this year so far, for the first quarter, we were trending down, not by a ton, but we're at least starting to see a trend down. But I will say that lately, in the last 6 weeks, activity's been up. So it's kind of hard to see how it's going to trend for the year. But the fact that more people are talking about it, there are more events around it, that in itself is good, because we have more people like being concerned about the fact that fentanyl is such an issue and that such a small amount can get you addicted or can kill you. 86% of our overdose deaths in St. Louis are from fentanyl. There are other drugs involved as well. In most of those overdoses, it's not just fentanyl. There are 3 to 5 other drugs involved in the overdose. So it's important to understand that even if I don't think I'm buying fentanyl, that lots of drug dealers are mixing fentanyl with other things, including marijuana. And so if you are going to use, it's important to know the source, because anything out there is potentially dangerous.
How long has this been going on? Because I remember hearing about this in elementary school, middle school. Yeah,
so the opioid crisis has been going on for about 20 years. It's just the type of drug changes. But with fentanyl, with these synthetic opioids, they're much more deadly. And so we're seeing a lot more overdoses with those.
Okay. So what is like the main property that makes it so addictive?
They literally attach to your opioid sensors in your brain. And so they basically kind of numb your system. So it basically slows down every signal from your brain to the rest of your body. And so it's the feel good part of it that people, and then every time it takes a higher dose to get that same feeling. So that is the fact that it actually connect to those opioid sensors is the big issue.
Okay. Well, that's a learning lesson for me, for sure. I don't know.
So Narcan actually knocks them off those sensors. So let's say you are going through an overdose, the injection of Narcan into your nose actually, that drug actually knocks the opioid off your brain receptor. And that's what overturns the overdose.
Okay. So was there a paper that you wrote about that?
I wrote the first the opioid crisis kind of report for St. Louis. It was a behavioral health report that was written in early 2022. So it analyzed kind of the last 5 years of data, the geographic distribution of the overdoses. So we could kind of decide as we launched this new bureau, the things that we were going to focus on.
Okay. So when we were doing research about you and everything that you were doing at Story Stitchers ahead of our podcast together, we were trying to look for that paper. Where is a good place to find that if we're interested? It
should be on the public health. It should be on the health department website. But if it's not, I can easily send it to you. It's public information. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I would love to learn more about that.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you.
No problem.
Just a couple more questions.
Okay.
So let's see. What would be the best one to ask right now? Ooh, yes. So this one is kind of more up my alley because not only am I big into mysticism, spirituality, and psychology, but I love philosophy. And you have a doctorate in philosophy, which I find very, very interesting. So what were the key ideas and lessons that you learned from philosophy? And is there an individual within that field that inspired you the most?
I always have a hard time picking favorites, so there's probably not somebody that inspired me the most. I think it's kind of like I'm a big quote person, so if there were things about philosophy that kind of shaped the way I've gone about my career, one of the things is just, I guess, self-reflection, how ego plays into things that we do and how much of that time it's negative. And so keeping your ego at bay helps you better serve others. I think it's also kind of the overlap of philosophy and theology that was appealing to me,
yes.
Which is why I went to Notre Dame and went to SLU for grad school. It's that education of the whole person that matters to me, which is kind of like propelled me into this. I'm always trying to learn new things. Like learning something new in a different field, like is not intimidating to me, but it's kind of that I'm going to keep developing my id, my identity. And my identity is not going to be wrapped around one part of my life. I'm going to continue to like develop it in a very diverse way so that I can serve the world in the best way possible. And so those are the big kind of ideas out of philosophy that truly impacted, how I see life and how I approach life. And truly the overlap between philosophy and theology and how that's played out in the way I approach my faith, I think is also a piece of it.
One of my favorite quotes from Ram Dass, if you're aware of Ram Dass, he said the ego is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master.
Yes.
And I've come to realize that in certain parts of our culture that we lived in today is more enabling towards the ego and hyping that up rather than our spirit or remaining faithful to something greater than the ego. And allowing the ego to take the wheel 9 times out of 10 can lead to destruction and confusion in a lot of ways. I remember, and that's what we were talking about earlier, is that sense of holding on to identity and attaching ourselves to the external world to form this identity. Because when we get into a certain crisis, whatever it may be, that challenges that identity, it can kind of get very difficult for us to hang on to that. And when we let go of it, and if we don't have a certain compass to fill in, I wouldn't say fill in the gaps, but to realize who we are, it can kind of really dismantle us and have us lost and confused in a way.
Yeah. So that's a great point. And that is kind of what I learned through going through the loss of my spouse is, and it's something I coach couples on all the time, is it's great to be part of a couple, but you have to know who you are separate of that, so that if anything were to happen, divorce, loss of a child, even loss of your spouse, like you are able to stand on your own in your faith, knowing who you are, knowing that while that person made up part of your life, like that is not everything that you are. And so when you go through that loss, then you can stand stronger. And then also, like if I have couples that I'm counseling on, maybe like one partner doesn't want their partner to go out with their friends or something like that, I also say like that's part of their identity. Like their identity is not solely the fact that they're your partner. Their identity is lots of different things. They're a son, they're a friend, they're all of these other things. They're whatever their career is. And so that you have to let them do those other things that are part of their identity, or we remove people's opportunity to grow or desire to even be with us when we don't allow them freedom and growth and space. Awesome.
Thank you. I've been saying thank you a lot, but I appreciate your time for sure, and all your thoughts and your experiences, because it definitely reminds me that I'm on the right track as well, because I'm working to do something similar that you do, while walking my own path, of course. Right. So thank you for sharing everything that you've shared.
You're welcome.
And to wrap things up, I do have 2 more questions.
Okay.
One is a individual question for you, and then one is more of the collective. For individually, what are your goals personally, as you as a person, and within your own work for the next 5 years, you would say?
Yeah, that's hard. Wow. Well, one of my goals is to see mental health and substance use trends in St. Louis decrease. And so I have to continue to evaluate the things we're doing to see what's working best. I want to impact more populations from an equitable standpoint. I want people across St. Louis to know that we're here to support them, that it's okay not to be okay, and that when they feel that way, they can reach out to us. I want to expand my team. I want to bring more funding into this issue. I want to transition to direct care in the community. So some, neighborhood clinic type thing. We're launching the urgent care in 3 weeks. So that's a step towards that. So kind of seeing that grow and blossom will be great. I want to increase the budget for behavioral health because it's needed. I want to have a successful transition through this election that happens, and understand whoever it is the leader, whoever that is our leader of our city, values behavioral health like I do, and to get on the same sheet of music with them, whether it's our current mayor or someone new. So there's a lot that has to happen in the next 5 years. I want to strengthen and highlight community partners that are doing the work and fund them if I can to do more amazing work. I want greater strengthened relationships with the local universities so that we can fill the behavioral health workforce like we need to. I want to advocate for laws in the state of Missouri and through the Board of Aldermen that support mental health for our local communities. And finally, the last piece, which influences mental health, is I want to positively influence economic mobility for families of St. Louis. So I want to make it easier for people to live their life on a daily basis and to not struggle. And so anything I can do to impact that from an economic mobility or mental health standpoint, I'm going to do that with the time that I have.
Much blessings to that. And I know much success will follow that vision. So I'm praying for that.
Thank you.
Every single day. And it's very inspiring. Everything that you said throughout this entire podcast just represents and reflects the good that I want to do and how I want to serve my community. And especially the situation that happened yesterday really put into perspective that I am a man of servitude. And sometimes I get in my own way, which we all do sometimes. But I'm really ready to excel in that form of art in a way. I think servitude is art in itself. And I'm sure that you can agree with that. And so many different ways that we can serve. And I'm very grateful that you are putting yourself on the line to serve people, let alone just yourself. So again, for the 20th time, thank you.
Thank you.
And then the last one, what do you feel is the future of mental health treatment here in St. Louis first?
Yeah, that's hard. It's a combination of things. So it's a combination of like non-traditional medicine, counseling, pharmaceuticals. It's whatever works for whatever person, as long as it's legal.
Yes.
So, it's understanding like what coping skills work for each person, and teaching people how to do those. So sometimes it's healing sessions that are more about music and meditation and things like that. Sometimes it's more of traditional medicine, and sometimes it's things that are very non-traditional.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. I don't have any more questions at all. Just the only thing I will say, if people wanted to reach out or learn more about you and learn more about your work and what you're involved in, how could we reach you, or how could we reach that information?
Yeah. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm there. I'm also on social media. You can reach out to my email address, which is garyj@stlouis-mo.gov, or you can call my office number. That number is 314-657-1411.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Julie Gary, everybody, just want to say one closing thing like I always do. Mine is always seeking to help transcend consciousness worldwide, starting with the community here, whether it's through interacting through the community, whether it's through mental health awareness, creativity, meditation, so many different ways to do it. But the goal is to transcend consciousness worldwide and to bring people together through higher states of consciousness. And whether if it's love, whether it's joy, blissfulness, and faith, that's how we'll do it. So signing out, Houston. Miss Julie, I hope y'all have a great day, and thank you for tuning in. Hey, thank you for staying after the YouTube video. Be sure to like, comment. It's important to share your voice, and subscribe to my channel. There should be a video on the screen. If not, then there's something wrong. But follow me on social media, Instagram, X, whatever it may be. Also, check out my blog in the description box below. Other than that, my name is Houston. I hope you have a great day. Namaste.